Picked up again by McDavid, straight up the middle, McDavid in, scores! What a goal! Tony Subban scores! Crosby scores! Sidney Crosby, the golden goal! He did it! The greatest goal scorer in National Hockey League history is Wayne Gretzky! And Hemsky's loose, Hemsky, he scores! Can you believe what we just saw? In comes Tavares, walks in, Reed scores! Tavares again! Canada's back in it! 3, 2, 1! Series over!
Hello and welcome back to episode number 6 of the One Timers podcast with Cam and Jules. Over the last couple nights, or just as of yesterday, the Montreal Canadiens have released Claude Julien and Kirk Muller. We're going to dive right into it right away. Jules, what are your thoughts?
Well, I actually want to hear from you, being the Montreal Canadiens fan. I would love to hear your initial reaction. But just to jump with mine, I think it stems from an overvaluation of how good their team is. I think that they signed a lot of guys in the offseason, spent a lot of money, and they really think that they're a cup contending team. I think that when you finish 24th in the league last year and you get a lot better, I think they are a good team. You start off hot. They start off like 7-1-1, I think. Extremely hot start. All of a sudden, everybody believes they're a cup contender. Now they're falling back down to probably where they should be as a team. And it gets the coaches fired because of the hype that was built up.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Like, with them, the start was unbelievable. Scoring, I think it was around 4.8 goals a game in those first, 9 or 10, just putting up huge numbers. Vancouver, as we talked about in the past, was a huge had played a big impact in that because they can't play defense. But when you look at this team, and I really liked what Bergevin said in this firing, because he said he saw tendencies of last year and potentially going down the same path with losing games, which he can't happen now that they're trying to be successful. So this is a team last year that had 2 8-game losing streaks in a single season, right? And now you go in this little slide right now where you're 2-4-2 in your last 8, not scoring very well. So maybe I think that had a big impact on it, and just didn't want to go down into the same thing. And the coaches are hired to be fired, right? What Don Cherry used to say. So in this case, I don't hate it. I didn't really mind those guys at all. I really liked Kirk Muller for the longest time because he doesn't do anything wrong, right? An ex-captain there, just not involved in the media, not like an influential guy either way. So he didn't hurt you. But when you look at it, he runs the power play, who have been notorious the past, well, pretty much since he's been there, just not a good power play. You always blame it on the players. But then now they start the season around 23%, I believe. The last 8 games, they're at 5.7% on the power play. So when you're going to close it and put a magnifying glass on the reasons, and I liked how Bergevin attested to all this, he's right in firing them and moving on. Because if you go on this slide in this shortened season, especially, right, if you lose your next 6 games, you're out of the hunt, especially playing against teams like Edmonton, who has been on a hot, really kind of flying right now. Calgary, who hasn't found their game yet, but they're going to. That the race in the playoffs, it's really going to start tightening up soon, and you need to be winning games right now.
Yeah, so I saw a couple things online that was basically saying this is Carey Price's fault. He's been inconsistent. I agree. He's been inconsistent. I think that that's a major part of them losing is him he'll make an amazing save and he'll let in a terrible shot. But I think the inconsistency you're talking about and the stretches of losses comes down to the young centerman. For me, it does, because Kotkaniemi, in my opinion, has not been good enough. Suzuki was the guy who started out hot. He was all world in the first 10 games of the year. And since then, he's been good. He's been decent. Not fantastic, though. Not what he was doing for them. And Dannell's just Dannell is just not there this year. I will get into Dannell a bit more in a bit. But what do you think about them keeping Dominic Ducharme? Because to me, it seems like they've been kind of grooming him to be the head coach someday. And I don't think they wanted to let him go because I think they still plan on that someday. But I think the interim tag is a staple for now because I think they planned on him being the head coach a few more years down the line and not right now. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so when that first came out, I was under the impression that it was just until we hire someone else. But now it's coming out that he'll be the interim for the remaining of the season. That's the plan. So for that, I'm a little uneasy with it. I'd like to see them go after. There's lots of available coaches out there. So if you let Ducharme stay here and run this whole team and then go into the playoffs and spend the next, I don't know how many, 4 or 5 months with them and being the head coach, and then you go hire another guy for a couple of years and want to then move on to Ducharme in a couple more years, it just seems like you don't want to give him the reins for too long and then say, okay, we're going to take them away from you and then we'll give them back to you. Because even if they do really well, I don't know if I'm sure he's ready, right? He's won at every level he's been at. Fantastic coach. But I think with the other available guys and the team that we're with right now, I'd like to see them take a stab at someone else. Yeah, I mean, Babcock's available.
Yeah. I think he's been doing French lessons apparently because he wanted the Montreal job. Yeah, but that actually is one thing. Wanting to have a French coach speak to the media, it's a big important thing to the ownership. It really limits your choices in choosing a coach. You can only have French-speaking coaches. My thing about Ducharme is that you went all in for this year. Like, this is the year they really have gone all in and they want to win this season. So you're going to put all that now. I understand he's won every level, but he's never been a head coach in the NHL. You're going to put all the stake, everything you're running on, and you're just going to throw it to a guy who's never been a head coach in the NHL. So
yeah. I mean, the name that comes to me or comes to mind, top of my list, and I think on a lot of people's list, is Gerard Gallant, right? And in a situation right now, if he wants the job, you give it to him. And I think it's, like I said before, it's big on not giving Ducharme the idea that he is the new head coach, because the longer he stays as interim, right, it's going to be harder, because once you get a taste to being the head coach, even if he does well, then you take it away, right? And you say, okay, yeah, you did well, but your time's not yet. Then maybe he looks somewhere else because he's proven that he can coach at the level. And if you're trying to develop him into a coach for the future, you don't want to give him that. So I think they should go after someone else right away. Someone like Gerard Gallant, who is a veteran, is a winner, will be able to handle those young guys really well. But I mean, we'll see. Like, it's I was surprised by it. I didn't expect to have a coaching fire this year, but things happen.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll move on from this topic, but something that just popped into my head was, and the same way you have to 2-week quarantine for players, you're going to have to do for a coach. So if you take your time, do an interview process and signing the guy, and the guy's in the States right now, you're going to have to wait 2 weeks before you get that coach with the team. So, I mean, we'll move on. I want to talk about Phil Dannell because he reportedly in the offseason turned down 6-year, $30 million contract, so a $5 million AAV. And we had talked about, I think, in maybe the first episode of this podcast about like what he was thinking. And now we're 18 games into the season. He does not have a goal. And this is a guy whose career high in goals in the NHL is 13. He's only ever scored 13 goals as a max in a season. There's no goals this year. How bad does turning down that contract look for you? Or is it a thing where he doesn't like Montreal? Because I can't figure it out why a guy like that would turn it down, because he is not a number one center to me. You need Suzuki to be the number one center there. You need Kotkaniemi to be a second line center, because Danault at best is a decent two-way second line center. Probably on a cup contender, he's a third line center for me. So him getting $5 million a year, I can't understand him turning that down.
Yeah, and like you said, we talked about this before, and it'll definitely be the same response that we had then, or same ideas, same takes. He is a fantastic, right, third line center that because he plays fantastic defensively and he has offensive upside, right? Not a huge goal scorer, but puts up points, can play power play, can play all situations. My thing with him, and it's one of those frustrating things kind of going into he's much better than Desharnais was, right? For Habs fans out there, like I said, we're going to get off the Habs, but we got to let loose a little bit here. Desharnais got played much more than rightfully deserved by talent, right? We, certain things go into he was just a perfect guy in the locker room and you couldn't not play him, blah, blah, blah. But unless that's the same case with Dannell, he's still your first guy over the bench in 3-on-3 overtime. He's still he's still playing, 20 minutes a night, giving every opportunity possible, but he's not producing and not scoring. So, and talk about the contract, he says, I want to be a number one, right? He said it last year after the playoffs. It's great giving the young guys a chance, but don't get me confused with the number 3 center because I'm not. You are, right? You should be. If you want to be successful and have a career with lots of longevity, you are a number 3 center that can play for 8 more years. You can play a long time, 10 more years. But if you're trying to push your luck to be what does he think he's worth? 8 points in 18 games right now when you're given lots of opportunity. And then the no goal thing, no one wants a number 1 center that can't score. So I don't know. I think maybe he wants a second chance somewhere else. If that's the case, then I'd probably look more for maybe asking for a trade. But at the same time, you're at the NHL level and a young guy comes up that's much better than you. You either accept your role or you look to move on. And the new age of professional sports is look to move on, right? Things aren't working here. I move on. So maybe that's what he was saying. Maybe they're looking for a move. I'm not sure, but for his bank account's sake, he's not going to get paid more than that or even close, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think he his highest value to any team was Montreal. And I think turning down that offer, he's going to get a lot less in the offseason. But we want to talk about guys hurting their future paydays. We can look to Buffalo. We can look to Taylor Hall. Had a hot little start first few games. Since then has been just non-existent to me. I watched him the other night. Didn't really notice him very much. And then all of a sudden I see that they're just discussing extension talks with him. And I'm like, you're making a Jeff Skinner deal. Maybe again, if you're signing this, you're going to be spending, okay, let's say they extend him at the same price they paid for the 1 year. They extend him at $8 million a year. That means on your left side, you're going to be paying Hall and Skinner a combined $17 million to play on your left side. And I don't think either of them are as elite as maybe most people think they are. Or obviously, everybody's given up on Jeff Skinner. It's not going well. But I don't think Hall's that good, to be honest with you. I know he won the Hart Trophy, but I think that would be a massive mistake for Buffalo. And you're talking about a team that the Eichel rumors for trade have picked up once again. How much further do you want to dig yourself in a hole before you realize that a lot of things have to change in your organization? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So in my opinion, you talk about 17 mil. If you have 2 forwards getting paid $17 million, and that'd be with an Eichel trade, right? Getting rid of Eichel. Those are your guys that are going to run the team, going to try to excel you into winning a cup. $17 million on 2 guys, right? I don't know the exact number. I know Crosby makes 8.7. I don't know Malkin's exact cap hit. I don't know if you do, but it'd be somewhere in that combined 17 mil, maybe a little bit higher, right? So obviously the huge pay cut on Crosby's behalf, but you take your 2 studs and even the Marner Matthews thing, right? So they're sitting around 20 mil, I believe combined.
21, I think.
21. Okay. But they're 3 and 4 in points in the league and are arguably the 3 and 4, if not 2 and 4 offensive guys in the league at this moment. So you're getting your money's worth you're paying for a guy with 6 points and 1 point. If you're going to, why are you extending it? The Skinner deal's over. We're going to touch into that a little bit later. But no, the whole thing, he's a accelerated Dannell at this point. If you're going to go that way, he's worth to a lot of people, maybe a lot, or to himself, a lot more than he is on paper. He's not a bad player, and he can play in the NHL for a long time, but that Hart trophy just kind of ruined him because now he has to get paid a ton of money and he has to be that number one guy. And I don't think it's there. And you talk about Eichel, who at the start of the year was fantastic. I think he was my first prop of the year, along with Hall were great. But since then, even he hasn't looked good. So Buffalo in general has been kind of just imploding. And we talked at the start about potentially surprising someone in the playoffs. I think that's out the window now. They're on that look for the top pick now, I think, in the draft.
Yeah, they'll be right in that discussion. You mentioned Matthews there. Are we going to talk about everybody's going on 50 and 50? Can he do it? Maybe. I don't see it happening, but it would be awesome.
I don't see it happening just on the statistics. If I was putting my money on the line, I'm going to say no, because things have to go right for it to happen. Lots of things have to go right. When you watch this guy play, like, why not? Right? He is 18 and 20 right now with no goals in his last 2 games. So, but he just scores. You watch that game against Montreal at the 4 points, the 2 goals. He just score. Anytime he's taking a shot, he's a threat to score. So, and you have like him and really working really well right now. Their power play is looking fantastic. He's playing with a lot of confidence. He's playing with much more speed. So he's creating in lots of more, creating more opportunities than just off the half wall taking shots. Right? He's scored tons of different kind of goals this year. So I'd like to see it happen. He's a guy that's really, really grown on me. I think I might have touched on it last episode where, well, we touched on this, I think the second or first episode, how Toronto will not win because the young core doesn't care to win. And I said that Matthews cares about scoring 50 more than he scores or cares about winning a cup. Right? He's very, very individually focused. But through the course of this year, we're going to cut the Selke stuff that we talked about last episode because he's not going to win the Selke. But he just completely developed his game overall, I think. And honestly, that has helped him offensively because now he's getting lower and they're breaking out a lot easier. So not spending much time in the D zone, getting to spend more time in the offensive zone. He's using his total 200-foot game, which is allowing him to use more speed. So I kind of went on a rant there, but I guess just to answer your question, my betting mind says no. But if anyone's going to do it in the future, I'd say it's got to be him in the way that he's doing it right now. And the division has a perfect, like, that helps so much because you get to play, as we talked about, that Canadian division is not very strong. You look at the top goal scorers in the league, a lot of them are from that Canadian division. So yeah, maybe. I think he's definitely going to be in the 40s. I think by the end of the year, he might hit 50. If it's in 50 games or if it's in 56, I'm not sure. But he's it's just exciting to watch him play right now.
Yeah, not even going to disagree with any word you said. He's fantastic. I think they have 6 more games against Ottawa, so he can rack up goals in those games. He's a truly spectacular player. I mean, Tavares is struggling now that he doesn't have Marner on his line and Marner's with Matthews. But at the same time, you look at that, they're 3rd and 4th in the league in points, and he has 18 goals in 20 games. Why would you switch them up? Why would you change a thing? I guess we'll jump to the next topic, which is Nashville Predators. So if anybody doesn't know, Nashville's kind of sent out a little thing with their GM last week. They said they're open to trading pretty much every player on their team that's not named Ryan Ellis, Roman Josi, or Pekka Rinne. A lot of people I saw were really surprised with the Pekka Rinne. They're like, "Oh my god, like why would you keep Rinne? He's terrible now." It's like, okay, look, one, Rinne's actually having a much better season than most people would probably think. But for me, keeping Rinne it's a legacy move. Nashville hasn't existed for a very long time. They've never had a lot of guys who really was just a Nashville Predator, was a legacy guy, retired in their system. I think they say, hey, we're going to keep Rinne. He's probably going to retire after this year or go to Europe. So that's the move. You're going to keep him. He's just a Nashville Predator for his whole career. Totally understand that. What I don't understand is, okay, we're open for business, but are you trying to rebuild? Because they didn't say they want to rebuild. They said they're open for business. So most of the contracts you probably want to move, I think, are absolutely unmovable in this team. What do you think?
Yeah, exactly. The Rene thing, right quick. He, like you said, he hasn't hurt them this year. The team in front of them is the reason they're not winning games. He hasn't been an issue. Is he going to stay for many more years after? Maybe another one, probably not. Like you said, it's probably coming to an end very soon. And you're hoping that Askarov will be able to come in and fill his shoes. My thing with Rene, the trade-wise, is even though he's playing good, everyone's mind is that he's done. He's not that good anymore. So why would you hold on to him? But why would you get rid of him? He doesn't hurt you right now. You're going to trade him for nothing. And now you have a huge issue in net. So that's why I think, and like you said, it's a respect thing to him. He doesn't deserve to be traded because he hasn't done anything in his whole career really that has hurt the Nashville Predators, right? They've been a very, like, with that 2017 run, pretty much they've had a run the last 5 years. Besides last year, they've been very, very successful. So contract wise up front, I mean, we laughed about this probably a month ago, is Ryan Johansen. We were talking about Seth Jones, and I completely forgot that he was ever in Nashville. And then I was a 1-for-1 trade. I was like, okay, so who went there? And then the name Ryan Johansen comes up. And maybe it's just me on this, but the last time I've really heard that name in a positive might have been when he got drafted. Maybe his time in Columbus, I would say. His time in Columbus was good, but has he done anything in Nashville? I feel like he's went to Nashville and then just kind of fell under the radar, but getting paid a whole lot of money.
Yeah, so he signed that contract. I think it was a same thing as Duchesne. I think he got an 8x8. For him, his whole thing is that not only did he get points, make plays, but he was a goal scorer. He has one of the highest shooting percentages in the league over like the last 10 seasons. For some reason in Nashville, he just doesn't shoot the puck anymore. Like it's a crazy statistic. Like he just does not shoot the puck, and he just stopped scoring. And I think he still has the potential to be an effective player, but then you immediately look at the price tag. You say, okay, he's getting paid $8 million a year. I don't know how many points he had last year, but I don't think it was over 40 or 50. And that's a guy you're paying $8 million to be first line center. And then you go sign Duchesne because you don't have a first line center. Johansen's not doing it. And we both have shared our opinion multiple times in this show about Duchesne, that he is not a first line center in the NHL. So now you got 2 second line centers. You're paying $8 million a piece. I think if you look at their team right now, they've played 18 games. Philip Forsberg has 17 points. And the closest forward to him in points is Duchesne with 8 points in 18 games. Second on their team in points is Yossi with 10. And these guys are locked up. Like, they're not going anywhere. Like, Johansson still has 5 more years, I think. Duchesne's on a second year of an 8-year deal, I think. These guys are stuck there. They're talking about trading Ekholm. Like, okay, you're going to deal one of your better D. What are you getting back? Like, how do you fix these problems? You have guys locked in for a long time. And if you are rebuilding, you just signed Yossi. You just signed him to, what was it, $9.5 or $9 million a year for 7 or 8 years. Like, obviously, you don't want to give him up. He's your captain. He's one of the best D in the world, like probably top 2 or 3. But at the same time, did he sign up to go on a rebuild all of a sudden? So I don't know. What are you thinking?
Well, yeah, just fact check the numbers from Johansen. Since his last 3 years in Columbus were 33 goals, 26 goals, and then 6 goals in 36 games in Columbus, half the season in Nashville with 8. So he had 14 that year. Since then, he scored 14, 15, 14, 14, and now he has 0 and 4 points. So you kind of go into that's my opinion on it, why I said we haven't seen anything good. Sure, he still had in Nashville last year, he had 36. The year before, he had 64, it's a good point, like great point number. But as a goal scorer and at the number that you're getting paid, you want to see that for a long time. You don't want to see any kind of decline when, like you said, you have $5 million left. I think that was a big issue, and he got signed much before Skinner, but we talk about guys that have a couple really, really strong years and then warrant a huge, huge payday. And that's why I think we're gonna really start seeing guys take that double bridge deal, right? And or not guys take it, but the GMs start forcing it upon guys. So you come out to your entry level, you take a small deal, maybe you produce, maybe you don't, or maybe you sign like a 3 or 4 year deal, but then in the intermediate phase, instead of signing 8 years, you sign another 2 years. I understand it's not really not optimal for the players, but as a GM, it just gives you a lot more safety net for these guys, because it's for a guy that you don't know is going to produce for 8 years. It's hard to throw away $64 million on a guy that you like. I don't know. I think Nashville's in trouble when you talk about Forsberg is great, but when you talk about Duchesne and Johansen in there, I just don't see how they get out of it. They can't keep themselves above water.
Yeah, I think you're right on the contract thing to a certain extent, because the thing that blows my mind about this is, okay, well, let's look at the Kevin Hayes contract. Okay, so they signed that contract knowing the last 2 or 3 years of the contract aren't going to be good for the Flyers. But they're like, you pay for the contract now, you got the guy for, the first 5 years of it, he's going to be good. We're talking Duchesne and Johansen and Taylor Hall or Jeff Skinner, where 1 year into the contract, you're like, how do I get out of this? And you got 7 more left. It's crazy. If you're buying a guy out like that, the buyout's going to go till 2030. Like, how are you going to manage to deal with that? I guess we'll move on to one of our last segments. I think we're buzzing through today.
Let me touch one thing on the contract thing. We talk about term, and when it's a guy like McDavid, it's a guy like Crosby, Ovechkin, you feel safe in that 8 year, 9, 20 years. I don't care. Like you feel safe in that contract because you know he's going to produce. But at the same time, you look at some other sports, basketball has a 5-year cap, right? You can't sign more than 5 years. And when you look at it from the hockey standpoint, you're like, oh, that's crazy. Like, why only 5 years? He's going to be with your team and you want to lock him up. But so many things can happen in 5 years, right? You like not even just injuries, but just guys hitting a plateau. So if you're throwing away that much money, like I don't mind a 5, even a 6-year cap. But when you get into these 8-year deals at huge money on guys that have only succeeded for 2 years in their career, right? It's like guys' stats don't always go up. So when you're betting on a guy that just scored 30, there's lots of guys that score 30 one time in their career, right? There's lots of guys that score 40 one time in their career. You score 40 as a 21-year-old, doesn't mean you're going to score 40 every season here on out. And that's where I think in the past 5-6 years, GMs have been pressured into it, saying the guys need to get paid. Like they're not going to play. A lot of guys sitting out. So I think it's not the GM's fault as much. But in the next 10 years, I expect to see a curve back towards less money or more money on shorter term, and then longer term being maybe less money, just safer.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. That's why you're seeing such an influx of younger guys in the league, is because some guys are getting so much money, and with COVID, teams don't have as much money, so they need younger guys who are on entry level deals to come and just fill out lineups. They need to spend less money. And it's a constant battle between the players and the GMs, because players want, if I'm a player, okay, I want 15 years. I want 16 years. I want 10 mil for 16 years. I'll lock up an $160 million contract. I'm good. But GMs and teams can't afford to be spending that, because oftentimes guys will get hurt and teams don't want to get stuck paying, or if guys fall off, teams don't want to have to buy people out. It's a protection for the owners, for the teams, for everybody. So it's going to be a constant struggle between, how contracts are going to go. I want to move into the last few weeks. We've been doing our projected Olympic rosters for next year's Olympics. We had Canada's roster, and then last week we did the United States. This week we're doing Team Russia. So we wanted to mention Panarin. We wanted to wish him his best. We saw that there was an article that came out that was basically attacking him. And from what we understand, everything I've seen is that the allegations are completely unfounded. But either way, he's taken a step away from the game and from the Rangers. Kudos to the Rangers for totally having his back. They came out with a great statement basically saying everything is fraud and fake, and that, they're with Artemi, and I wish him all the best. I hope he's able to come back to the game soon. I don't know if you want to put anything on that.
Yeah, I did want to touch on it. It's very difficult to say like that I completely side with him whenever these allegations come up, because you don't know what happens. But in this case, it's in the general case, it's a very touchy subject, and I'm very glad he stepped away to not let it distract play and just say, I want to get this done. Right. And I think that shows a lot about his character as a whole, saying this isn't true, but this is going to be a distraction, not just to me, but my teammates and everyone. So let me just step away. Let me get this handled. But when we dive in a little bit here, just to I don't want to get too into the Russian government and politics or anything, but this is a guy that we discussed before about supporting Putin's opponent, right? And now this comes up after the fact, and with, like you said, no evidence at all. It's from 2011, where no one involved has came out and said it. It's just a written article and then been kind of pushed by like news and government, not by the person affected or the family affected or anyone. So that kind of scares me, because we understand the power that these places have, right? Putin has. And so in that case, it's a little bit scary if that's the case for him. I don't really fear for his safety per se, but it just, I mean, you look at the strength and power that they have, and they could be in complete control of this if it weren't to be true. Like I said, I don't want to dive in and completely say it's not true, because if it is true, then Artemi is in the wrong and should be not involved with the New York Rangers at all. But until that comes out, I hope that he gets this handled.
And going from the Russian political talk, we'll go to Team Russia's roster. I actually have Panarin on my first line, just to let you know. So please come back to the game. I need you out here. I'm not sure. I think we discussed a bit before. We like to kind of keep our rosters between each other and not share anything until we get on here so we can debate a little bit. But from what I understand, our top lines will probably be pretty similar. I have my first line for this team will be Panarin with Malkin and Kucherov. Oh, before anybody gets mad at us, I want to remind everybody that Evgeny Kuznetsov is not eligible to play in the 2022 Olympics. He has a 4-year ban from the IHF for testing positive for cocaine. So when I was looking into this, I was like, Kuznetsov is going to be either my first or my second center. And then I had to remember that. And that's why he's left off my list. I assume he's probably off your list. So yeah, my first line, Panarin, Malkin, Kuch.
Yeah, so I think we'll go. You can do your second as well. We'll do 2 and 2, just get the flow better, because mine's the same. So,
all right. So my second line is Alex Ovechkin on the left wing, Vadim Shipachyov in the center and Andrei Svechnikov on the right. Can't pronounce his name. Too much Russia going on right now. Vadim Shipachyov plays in KHL. He's been the leading scorer there for 3 of the last 4 years. I think he might have lost to Kaprizov 1 year. He's a fantastic player. He's done unbelievable in international tournaments. He had a short stint coming over. It didn't work out in the NHL, but he's a fantastic player. He's a fantastic scorer. I think this year he's 33 or 34, and he still had 67 points in 53 games in the K. I have him at second line center, even though he's not in the NHL, just because I think he can score at an elite level. And I think him with Ovi and Svechnikov, they would be a fantastic second line. Who's your top 6?
Yeah, so first line I went Ovi, Malkin, Kucherov. It's just the Panarin Ovi. Just pick one. And then I too went Panarin, Shipachyov, and I went Tarasenko on that second line. The Shipachyov thing is interesting because a lot of people leaving him off or putting him in as an extra, all the analysts and things, because it didn't work out in the NHL. The Russians always take KHL guys. Like, there's always going to be a KHL guy thrown in the lineup somewhere. Just because he didn't work in the North American game per se in this one stint doesn't take anything away. I think it might have been Gusev maybe that before he came over that led the league in scoring and beat him. But he's been a dominant force. And we talk about Kuznetsov. We'll get into our center depth with the Russian team, but it is weak, right? Very, very weak. And Kuznetsov would have very much helped it. I only have them at really 4 centers that can play in the Olympics. So he has to get slotted into that role, and he's going to need a big role in order to play, like in order for them to be successful. So I'll hop into my third and fourth. I go Svechnikov, Nemesnikov, and then Kaprizov on that third line. Like we said, Nemesnikov now at third line is if that's our third line depth, it's hard to compare with certain other teams. And then Buchnevich, Dadonov, and I have Radulov there on my fourth line with my extras of Gusev and Garyanov. So on my fourth line with Dadonov as a centerman, he's a winger. He's not a center. I think he's a top 12 player on the Russian team, and I don't think they have any centers that can play. So maybe it's another guy taking the draws and playing center, but their center depth is very, very subpar. So I had to make do with what I did.
I mean, that's a great lineup. I actually, on my third line is where I have a winger playing center. So my third line goes Kaprizov, Gurianov, and Tarasenko. Gurianov is listed as a left wing and a right wing on the NHL website. I've watched a few Dallas games where he has played center, and I really like his play. I think he has 11 points in 14 games this year. He's a good player. I've seen him play the center role. I thought he was fine in it. And we're talking about a team, like you said, that's struggling for center depth. You need to find players that can play in there because they just don't have it. So I have him at center there. I think that's a fine line. If he can play the role, if he can find a way to play center, it's fine. My fourth line, I have Buchnevich, Nemestikov, and Dadonov. I mean, there's a struggle with this lineup is that they don't have a lot of guys that can fill in that bottom 6 role. They have a lot of guys who are just top 6 on teams, but maybe not the most elite top 6 in certain areas. So it's really going to be a struggle of what line can really shut another one down when it comes to them. My extras were Gusev and Radulov, just a couple of older guys who have done well on the international stage. Radulov, I think, is one of those guys that can play a little bit more hard-nosed and just, be a grind. And Gusev, it was fantastic at the World Championships, World Cup of Hockey kind of guy. So I think he'll be able to slot in. And I think I wouldn't be opposed to Shipachyov going down to the third line and getting him and Gusev back together because they've had some chemistry in the past. I mean, that's our forward group. There's a couple changes between the two of us, but it's hard when there's a lack of depth. I find, right?
Exactly. And this is our first, we've done Canada and US, but this is our first one with all 14 players are the same. Some lines are different where they're sitting in the lineup, but we have the same 14 players. So that's interesting. I think there are a couple other guys that maybe, and I don't know the depth in the KHL and who knows what happens at camp, but I think that's interesting. Let's dive into the defense. Um, an early look at their defense is top heavy. Let's just maybe say that. Um, I'm very surprised doing this Russian team because Russia's always a powerhouse, but when you look at this team, you're just they don't look it. So dive right in. I got Provorov playing with Sergachev and then Orlov playing with Romanov. The my only thing with the Provorov and Sergachev is, like we said, team's not going to be very deep. You're going to play against the Canadians, let alone the Americans. These Provorov and Sergachev are going to have to play 35 minutes probably, like a lot of ice time. And Orlov and Romanov are going to have to play a lot in the second, but I don't think Romanov is quite there yet to say we're going to match you with McDavid, right? I think he's not there yet. So if you're going to run two lines, that's my only argument. I think I'm hoping that you have it different, so then we can kind of go back and forth. But let's hear yours.
So I have the same four players, but just in a different order. So I have Provorov and Orlov. I have them together because Provorov, I'm a Flyers fan, but I'll be the first to say that Provorov is not an elite offensive defenseman. He plays both ends of the ice. He's fantastic. He logs major minutes for them. And just like you said, Provorov's going to have to play over 30 minutes a night for this team just because the depth is not there. Orlov, I find he's up and down the ice. He has a little bit of offensive flair. So that's why I had him with Provorov in a top pairing. I have Sergachev and Romanov as my second pairing. I understand it's young, but for me, like I want to have one of Sergachev or Provorov on the ice for majority of the game. So I wanted them to be split up so I could have each of them on the ice. Romanov, like you said, he's young, but he's looked good in the NHL. And looking at the other D on this roster, he has to slot into my top four, I think. I think there could be a discussion with my fifth defenseman that maybe could take him out of it, but I think he's been better this year. And like Sergachev won a cup. He's a fantastic D. He's earned the right to be there and play huge minutes for them.
Yeah. My only thing with the wanting them both on the ice is I think if this team's going to be successful, well, one thing we'll get to the goaltending has to be there, but then with Sergachev and Provorov playing together, they have to be a plus. So them and the offensive top six have to be a plus, and you hope that their plus counteracts with the bottom four minus, because right now it's a huge separation. Well, I'll just dive right in. I have Zadorov and Zaitsev for my third D pairing, and then my extras I have Kulikov, and then I'm put a little asterisk on my eighth guy. I have Nikita Nesterov in there. I think this is a guy that doesn't get into the lineup at all. You can put Gavrikov in there, who plays with the Blue Jackets right now. You can put Artem Zub in there, the young defenseman. I don't know who they go after. Nesterov is more of an NHL name. And from my knowledge, getting to watch players, I put him on my list just because don't really want to put a guy on there that I haven't been able to watch play.
Yeah, so I actually have the same bottom pairing as Zadorov and Zaitsev. Zadorov was a guy I was talking that could end up in that top four. A lot of people were really surprised when he got traded for Brandon Saad in the offseason because obviously Brandon Saad is fantastic, 3-time cup winner, scores a lot of goals, and not a lot of people know what Zadorov brings to the table, but I think he's a crazy defenseman. He steps up, throws big hits, pressures hard. I think he's actually a lot of what Colorado's missing this year on their back end. They don't have the toughness. I like Zadorov a lot. I think that he's a guy that can play. Zaitsev, I needed a right-handed shot on that right side. I don't think Zaitsev is an elite level D. I don't think he should be really playing at an Olympic level, but you need guys to fill out there. And my extras were Gavrikov and Zub. I've watched them both a bit. Zub's been fine. I mean, he's one of those guys like you had your guys there. You could switch him out, and I probably wouldn't argue very much. Gavrikov, I watched him a few times. I think his time on ice when I saw him was over 20 minutes a night. So any guy that's able to log that much time, especially on a team that generally would have Werenski and Jones and a good defensive core, he's a guy that I say, okay, well, I need somebody that can maybe fill in because let's say Sergachev or Provorov get hurt in a short tournament. I need somebody that can log some minutes in there. That's why I picked him as an extra, just to be able to jump in and be steady. I mean, we can move right on to our goalies because I think this is the best part of the roster and also the most important part. Like you said, they're only going to succeed if their goalies are running. And I think they have 3 fantastic goalies. I have Andrei Vasilevsky as my starter. I think he is the best goalie in the world. There's some discussion with some of the American guys. I'm totally fine with that, but Vasilevsky is the best goaltender in the NHL, in the world. He'll have to be big for them. My second is Varlamov out of the island. He's fantastic goal. I think he has a 935 or 930 save percentage this year. He's just a steady guy. You know what you're getting out of him. Happy to have him there. My third is Igor Shesterkin. Shesterkin's young, tough start to the year, but since then has a 920 save percentage now, I think. I think you need to have a young guy coming with your team. You need to groom the next guy who's going to be your starter. So even if it's in a third role, I think Shesterkin's the guy. I thought about Samsonov, but Shesterkin's just showing me more. I think he's more of the future of Russia in the net. What about you?
I have the exact same. No complaints, no issues at all. So now that the team's complete, we look at it, and Vasilevsky is going to have to play every meaningful game. Not that Varlamov is bad, but for a team like this with not a lot of depth, you're going to have to be rolling and you're going to have confidence in that number one. So he's going to have to come off to a good start and play most games. Varlamov will probably play the weaker games. Shesterkin will not get a chance in the net if they're going to be successful. Yeah, I put a period next to your statement when you said he's the best goalie in the world right now. I understand Hellebuck won the Vezina. And is a great goalie, but I don't think anyone touches this guy right now. He's above and beyond. And bring the Tampa arguments, bring up whatever you want, but he hasn't done anything to waver from number one in my mind. But overall, it'll be interesting when we go over Finland and Sweden in the upcoming weeks, because I think the Swedish team will be strong. But the Russian team here, like, anything can happen in tournament, one game play, right? You have offensive weapons. They score 5 goals. Vasilevsky you're not going to put up 6 very often on Vasilevsky, so you never know what happens. They can win games. But against Canada and US, like in a series, they don't win. I don't see them being successful, but that's the fun about tournament play. You play them one time, who knows what happens. So it'll be interesting. I think my overall rankings go in order. I sit with Canada at 1, US at 2, and now Russia at 3 with 2 teams left to go.
Yeah, I'm with you. Those are 1, 2, and 3. I love your chat about Vasilevsky there. I think this might be a big thing for him to go against every naysayer out there. If the NHL gets to go over and play these games and they get to be there, where he has a team in front of him that's probably not the strongest in the tournament, maybe not even a top 3 team in the tournament. And he's going to be getting a lot of shots, especially from that high octane offense in Canada. I think it could be a time. I know he won a cup. I know he's won Vezinas. I know he's fantastic. We both agree he's the best goalie in the world. But that could be a time for him to step up and just prove anybody that does not believe that and just say, hey, I am the best in the world. That's going to be his opportunity. It's going to be a big thing right there. Do you want to move on to our props and drops for the week?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go first here. I think yours might be a little more exciting than mine. Kind of hit a mainstream approach on this one, but and we ended up talking about both these guys a lot, so I'll be short and sweet with it. My drop of the week and drop of the season so far, I would say, is Jeff Skinner. We talk about him, but also the general manager in Buffalo for making the deal and putting the pressure on Jeff Skinner, because if he's signed to $5 million right now, he might still be my drop with, I believe, 1 point right now in 14 games.
Yeah.
And no goals. But no, and like it's unacceptable, and it blows my mind that a guy can just not find a game. Like we talk about still playing power play minutes, you're still scoring goals. Like if you're a goal scorer, you go to the net, one goes off your ass, it goes in. Like you just got to find ways to get something done. And when nothing's going right, and now you're a health bomb, right? You're a $9 million healthy scratch. Like it's, like I said, maybe it's not on you. Maybe that's just your plateau and you've got a great agent. So I think the drop may more sit with the general manager, but I can't drop him. So we're gonna drop Jeff Skinner. My prop right quick. I'm gonna take a guy we've talked about, Austin Matthews. 18 goals and 31 points in 20 games on the number one team in the league right now. It hurts for me to say it, but they are. And you look like you talk about not scoring in his last 2 games. Still, like he was 18 and 18, no goals in his last 2. One was a shutout. So I understand, like if he's not producing, they're not I understand they have lots of depth, but he's in on all the goals. Like their line is just him and Marner are putting so much in there. Nylander has 2 goals last night. Matthews has 2 assists. So the way that he's been doing everything so far, it's very exciting to watch, not as a Habs fan, but as a hockey fan. And we didn't, I was going to hit him last week. I didn't end up hitting him. So he really deserves it. And yeah, he deserves the credit. He's been doing great. So I'm going to give him a prop.
Anybody else catch up that we always, when we give somebody a prop, they stop scoring, and if we give somebody a drop, they start scoring. So I think this is the Montreal fans' way of trying to get Austin Matthews to stop scoring.
You're damn right it is.
Yeah, so I mean, I like both those picks. I look at Jeff Skinner, and I completely agree with you. It's crazy for me because when he signed to $9 million, I was like, that's an overpayment, right? Obviously, he's a career 60-point guy, generally 50, 60-point guy. $9 million is a lot for that. But he not only is backtracked from being a 50 to 60-point guy to now being a 10 to 15-point guy, maybe, if he's in the lineup. So it's really crazy to see his fall from grace. But I'll go for my drop first. I have from my Philadelphia Flyers, Carter Hart. He has an .891 save percentage on the year. He had one good game this week, and I think the other one he lost. He lost to the Boston and Lake Tahoe. I think he got pulled. He had a .797 save percentage. Was not his night. Obviously, in front of him, they had a lot of guys out with COVID, so he didn't have a great team in front of him. But he just hasn't been good enough this year. He's not making the first save. Generally you say, okay, well, they'll make the first save, and then if the D are there, they'll clean it up. He's not making the first save. It's not like rebound goals are going in. He's just getting beat with shots short side. I don't know what's up with him. It looks like he's not seeing the puck as well. I know when we did our Canada picks, we had him as the backup or the third goalie on our Canada picks. He's not looking like he's going to come through for us. And that brings me to my prop, who's from the same division, who's going to take his spot on Canada, is Mackenzie Blackwood. Mackenzie Blackwood this year is on a terrible team in New Jersey. I think they're a god-awful team. He has a .935 save percentage. He's the only reason that they've won really any games this year. I know picking him this week is a little weird because he did have one bad game this week, but I think in his last 5 starts, he had 2 games where he was over 940, one game just below 900, and then the other game he was 930. He's been fantastic. He is fantastic. I don't know what else to say about him. He is a guy that's just stopping all the pucks that are being thrown at him, and he's on a bad team. There's high danger shots. He's been awesome. He's my prop.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like it. And to go on to the Hart thing, we both had him as the backup, not as the third. We had you had Blackwood as your third. I had Bennington. And I still have faith in Hart in the long run. I know what you're trying to do, though. As we said, a drop ends up turning it around. You're hoping for a shutout in tonight's or tomorrow night's game, but I hope he gives up a whole bunch just to shut that down, because I don't think you're not allowed to benefit from these props and drops. You can't be turning them in your own favor. But yeah, no, he hasn't been Hurt hasn't been great, and he's a reason the Flyers haven't been great. COVID related things, and like you said, there's lots of other issues involved. But the goalie thing, it'd be interesting to hear one of them talk about playing these divisional games, right? When you play the same team over and over again, because as a goalie, you say, okay, I get tendencies of shooters, right? And there's a lot that goes into the minds of players and goalies at the NHL level, studying like not just where does he get beat, but all different tendencies and where does he shoot from this angle, like habits and things. But on the shooters aspect, you're playing against the same goalie 8 times or 5 times in the span of 3 weeks or 2 weeks. You know what you're picking up on. You're saying, okay, well, he's not seeing these pucks as well, so we're just going to keep hitting him with these. So I don't know. Maybe I'm reading into things too much. I'm looking too deep into this, but I think it'd be interesting to just hear them talk about facing the same shooters over and over again, and who gets the overall advantage.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to bring up, because you know how you ever been in a series where a goalie gets into your head, like, okay, we just can't beat the guy, we just can't beat him. I wonder if it works both ways. So like Hart has struggled against Boston this year. Maybe it's in their head, like they know where to shoot on him, and he's sitting there thinking like, oh man, I can't seem to get these guys. Pasternak, I think, has 4 goals on him in 2 games already. But then there's a guy like Blackwood where maybe the Rangers have played them a few times and they're just like, man, we can't beat this guy. We can't get it by him. And it gets in the head to the shooters a bit. So I think it's a thing. I'd be pretty interested in hearing what they have to say as well, because I think it goes a bit both ways, and it just kind of who's ever got the advantage and got the confidence against the other guy. But yeah, it's a pretty interesting thought.
Well, and that's another thing. We talk about the scheduling, how you play the same team in a streak, right? So if you're playing against a Hart and they're playing Boston a couple times in a row, and you're getting lit up, then it doesn't matter who you're playing the next game. You're not bouncing back with high confidence, right? You're not getting in that big groove. And this is every year, right? This is not just this year, but you look at it the other way, right? The Devils play the Rangers and the Sabres and beat them a couple times. Now you're running high, right? So I think we'll see streaks. Well, I think we'll see Blackwood plummet at a certain moment throughout this year. I think we'll see Hart go on another run. I think it's going to be a very much a high and low season. And we talked about the Habs at the start of the year with starting high, now being low. I think they'll end up going back to high and then probably finding somewhere in the middle. It's a streaky year, but when we look at it, we're 20 games into the season, right? We're getting pretty close to the halfway point of the season already. So yeah, it's interesting. I'm just excited watching hockey. The last couple weeks haven't got to watch as much as I could. Got school exams starting to pile up, but now that they're out of the way, I'll hope to catch all the games in the near future. So thank you for the listeners. This will be recorded on Thursday, February 25th. Should be posted by at our normal time, Friday, February 26th at 7 p.m. Like you said, please subscribe and give us a follow or listen on YouTube. You can follow and comment on Instagram as well. We're active on there. We'd love to hear some comments and thoughts. Enjoy your weekend. Thanks.